So here's this Monsters series, right? It's basically gone full circle. It started out as an attempt to capture Dragon Quest in a different genre, went on to experiment with its identity for a while, before finding a happy niche it could settle into, and then revisited the classics with newfound confidence to deliver what I think are definitive examples of what this franchise is all about. If you look at the entire Dragon Quest Monsters series up to this point, you almost feel like it's done. They've finally layered mechanics on top of each other so that simple interactions can yield big explosive turns, or have this refined storytelling structure both easy to follow and engaging to play through. They've gone past the point of introducing huge features and are more interested in sprinkling on tiny add-ons and quality of life additions to give returning players something new to do, but nothing fancy. Nothing to really shake up the foundations of what Dragon Quest Monsters is. Not that it needs it. Dragon Quest Monsters was in a perfect place after the remakes of 1 and 2, and it's hard for video game franchises to find themselves there. We were looking at the Golden Age, and when you're in a Golden Age, there's typically a question lingering in the back of one's mind, asking, how long is this gonna last? If they never release anything else in that series, it'll last a few years, riding out the glory of its triumph before releasing something in honor of the past, and it'll be pretty good, but not quite the slam dunk everyone was looking for. And yeah, eventually in this story that does kind of happen, but there was one problem. The Golden Age was ushered in by remakes. They were opportunities to try new ideas without risking too much in the process, relying on nostalgia to forgive missteps and pitfalls. But if anything, nostalgia was the cherry on top. With those ideas cementing themselves as great inclusions to the formula, the iron was hot and the demand for a new title, not a remake or a port, but a brand new game with all these ideas in place, was high. Yet, again, we're full circle. You can't just keep adding mechanics and features to something in the hopes it's going to turn out better than the last, right? Right. And that's why Dragon Quest Monsters Joker 3 does it anyway, and somehow manages to be the best Dragon Quest Monsters title in the series. I'll be honest, it's hard for me to justify prattling on about Joker 3 in large part due to the way it builds on top of the changes made in the remakes. As far as battles go, it isn't adding anything major. Well, it kind of is. It's complicated. Joker 3 conveys more information in battle by highlighting enemy resistances to certain elements and status ailments before the player commits to an attack. While this doesn't feel like a huge deal, it changes the way players take their turn. No longer are you wasting attacks trying to figure out what enemy resistances are, or unknowingly hitting a boss with an elemental attack it's resistant to. Planning out your strategy involves less guesswork. Quickly collecting information on bosses you're struggling to get past gives you data you can use to breed a team better suited to fighting them. On the other hand, it also might encourage players to waste their turns trying to place status ailments on bosses slightly perceptible to them, all the while losing precious resources in the form of HP and MP. In this way, the conveyance of information in Joker 3 isn't necessarily there to aid players so much as influence how they decide to fight their battles. But nothing comes close to landing a successful status ailment on a boss who's just barely weak to it. And we probably wouldn't even try if we weren't told it was possible to begin with. Okay, I know, I'm stretching this out a bit, but you have to understand, that's what Joker 3 does. It's a bunch of tiny additions that fill in whatever gaps were left by the remakes, but it's not filler, it's not superficial changes convoluting what was already there. They are meaningful mechanics, they just don't stand out all that much. And they don't need to. When I say Dragon Quest Monsters Joker 3 added an elemental multiplier to battles, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you it was game-changing, but it doesn't change the fact it was impactful. If monsters on either side of the battle continue to use attacks of the same element consecutively during the round, each subsequent attack in that element gets a damage boost. So, for example, if one of my monsters uses a fire attack on an enemy, and then that enemy uses a fire attack right after, the enemy's attack will deal extra damage. If another monster uses a fire attack after that enemy, their attack will deal even more extra damage. It's a minuscule mechanic giving the player more to think about. Spamming my best attack might end up making a boss's attacks stronger. This impacts my ability to heal the damage my party's receiving, it alters the flow of battle, and once again forces me to rethink my strategy. Little changes, like maxing out skill sets on a monster and then fusing, unlocking stronger versions of those skill sets, or brand new skill sets when fusing with a monster who has a maxed out skill set of their own, like monster synthesis upgrading from 3 potential monsters to fuse to 5. Like being able to select which traits a monster inherits through super fusion in the postgame. Joker 3 is full of these small upgrades. On their own, they don't say much, but together they elevate Joker 3 into an even more complete experience than its predecessors. In Joker 3, you're given more options when decision making, you're asked to make decisions more often, and there's a greater amount of curveballs waiting to throw you off your rhythm or inspire you to pivot your plans. Remember what I said about Joker 1 trying to stuff as much player interaction into the gameplay loop as possible? Well, Joker 3 aims to do much of the same, but in areas adjacent to battles, and focuses on the secondary aspects of what makes a monster's title so great to play. There's a fact about Dragon Quest monsters that I've been avoiding to acknowledge since we started this. Its exploration leaves something to be desired. And now don't get me wrong, Joker 1 and 2 serve their purposes well, and navigation in those entries is fine, but I've always felt Dragon Quest Monsters was lacking in the level design department. The remakes highlight this well enough. Terry's Wonderland 3D was repetitive, procedurally generated rooms just like the original, and Kobe and Terra's Journey 3D was fine, but struggled to make use of those overworld abilities meant to spice up navigation. Joker 3's biggest contribution to the formula, and one future Dragon Quest Monsters titles will emulate semi-successfully, is its complete reworking of exploration and level design. Platforming. It added platforming. The distinct regions of Joker 3 all feature various platforming elements in their design. Whether it's shooting yourself through turbo rings to land on distant platforms or running across invisible bridges with only item pickups to hint at their position, most of what you're doing outside of battles in Joker 3 is navigating the heady platforming sequences and scouring the map for hidden items in hard-to-reach areas. But going on foot can only get you so far, and honestly, wouldn't make for exciting gameplay. So Joker 3 introduces the monster riding system. Players can mount their monsters in the overworld, assigning them to various styles of travel and utilizing their abilities to explore. Jumping, swimming, and gliding are the bread and butter of Joker 3's exploration mechanics. Poisonous swamps are traversable on the back of your monster, secret ledges hide hidden treasure chests you can scan for with your scouting tool, and failing a platforming challenge can force you into a battle. These modes of movement are a step up from Monsters 2's overworld abilities, in that the world and dungeons are built around them. You're encouraged to ride monsters frequently by the terrain you might come across, or in order to progress in the story, and you have to beat the challenges in front of you. It's a far cry away from walking up to a rock and hitting the A button to keep moving forward. It's also more interesting than walking around. The visual presentation of monster riding does a lot for keeping what could have been long stretches of boring territory engaging to explore. Presentation pulls a lot of the weight in Joker 3. In addition to riding monsters and performing platforming challenges, the world itself is bustling with the monsters you have to face. We briefly touched on this in the last video, where monsters in the second remake actually interacted with each other in the overworld. This made the world feel lived in, and the monsters you were facing like they were doing more than just waiting for you to show up. In Joker 3, those interactions have been ramped up to impact how you engage the monsters in the first place. The ecosystem has never felt this alive. Monsters follow a food chain and will hunt each other down in certain areas. Monsters will eat or possess other monsters, or tread over fire or enter a poisonous swamp and transform into different monsters. In this way, exploring in Joker 3 isn't just about running around looking for items. It's also about waiting and watching how the world behaves without your interference. Do you wait for two monsters to fight each other, or do you rush an enemy before it transforms into a stronger one? Maybe you wait so you can scout the rare monsters that only show up under those conditions. And all of this bestows upon you an immense appreciation for the environments you're traveling through. What Joker 3 manages to do that no other Dragon Quest Monsters has done is give the player a reason to slow down and observe. to really take in their surroundings and pay attention to what's going on around them. It does this without slowing down the pace players have come to expect from the Monster series at this point, which is fast. Battles are hectic but easy to follow, controlling your character on the world map feels snappy, and the various monster ride abilities are easy to maneuver with. Once again, we have that tried and true episodic slicing of narrative arcs we love about Dragon Quest, and once again, they serve as perfectly divided play sessions. And what a set of narrative arcs! If there's one thing Joker 3 does a cut above its predecessors, it's deliver on an interesting narrative. And not that previous entries had particularly awful ones, but Joker 3 is the first time in the series where the storytelling feels like a genuine attempt at being a gripping tale as opposed to the boilerplate narrative you slap onto a spin-off title. Before Joker 3, the other entries are a mixture of MacGuffin hunts and references to other Dragon Quests. Joker 3's narrative, however, deviates from this path with solid mysteries to solve, shaky alliances between characters, and suspicious villains. Instead of hunting for random orbs or temples, you're trying to undo the protagonist's amnesia and saving the lives of monsters and humans alike as you're guided by a mysterious heroine across the land. As you go about defeating the overseers oppressing the populace of each region you journey to, your memory slowly comes back to you. There's obviously tropes you recognize in this story, but they're utilized well and aren't the central appeal of it. Joker 3 has a wonderful cast of recurring characters and a hub world where you'll interact with them often. When you're not talking to this stable of personalities, the story beats of Joker 3 introduce new characters and place them at the center of the dilemmas you face in each region. You'll be endeared to more characters in Joker 3 than you ever were in its predecessors, and that's pretty rad. I'm told the professional version of Joker 3 has more callbacks to previous Jokers, but unfortunately the fan translation for the professional version has a few bugs to work out, so I didn't play it. And yeah, there's a fan translation out for Joker 3 because Joker 3, like the remakes, never saw a release outside of Japan. It's truly an unfortunate reality. The best this series has to offer never saw a release in the West, leaving behind a passionate audience eagerly awaiting the next one. And I mean it when I say Joker 3 is the best this series has to offer. It's rare to see an entry in a series take what anyone would assume is a complete experience without missing parts, and somehow highlight the gaps in it by filling them in. Joker 3 is the icing on the cake. It's the gold trim on a fancy dress. You don't realize how much better it looks until after you add it to the piece. And much to my dismay, there isn't much else to say about it. It's just a fantastic addition to the series. It's the poster child of the Golden Age, exemplifying everything we've come to love about the Monster series. And for a long time, it would be the last we ever saw of it. Joker 3 released in 2016, and the Monster series went quiet afterward. I mean, to be fair, it was a follow-up to two games that were difficult to follow up. Where do you go from here? No, seriously, think about it. Do you have any idea how they could possibly have added or improved on Joker 3? Because I don't. Whether it was waning interest or a re-examination of what they wanted to do with monsters, Joker 3 was the final entry in a journal full of awesome experiences. They ported Terry's Wonderland a few times to smartphones in the coming years, but news of a brand new Monsters game was scarce. Eventually, rumors surrounding a new Monsters title began to surface, but what Tosei and the Dragon Quest team had planned was something completely different. 18 years of non-stop development on a single franchise is bound to burn someone out. It was time for a complete digression, a pivot towards a fresh idea. Whether or not this idea turned out for the better is a story for another time.